Welcome to On With The Show, where we delve into the intriguing stories that have shaped the world of performing arts. I'm your host, Leo Sullivan. Join me as we explore the shocking murder of one of England's most prominent actors, William Terriss, an incident that continues to leave its mark on the Adelphi Theatre and Covent Garden. So without further ado, let's dive into the spotlight and explore the stories behind the curtain. This is On With The Show. Just before 7 p.m. on Thursday, 16th of December 1897, a horse-drawn black cab pulled up at the end of Maiden Lane. London's leading actor William Terriss and friend Henry Graves stepped down and began to walk towards the stage door of the Adelphi Theatre, where Terriss was due to perform the role of Captain Thorne in the William Gillette play Secret Service. As Terriss bent to unlock his private stage door, he was struck twice on the back by a man who had crossed the street. Turning to see who the apparent acquaintance was, Terriss was met with a knife plunged deep into his chest. William Terriss was born William Charles James Lewin on the 20th of February 1847 in London to an upper-middle-class family. Although privately educated and attending Jesus College, Oxford, he did not excel and did not study for a degree. After a brief stint in the Merchant Navy and spending time on a tea plantation in Bengal, William began assisting at a hospital in London where his brother was a surgeon before trying his hand as an apprentice engineer. In the 1860s, Terriss decided to turn his hand to amateur dramatics, finding a talent he could market which took him to the West End in 1870 in the small part of Lord Cloudray's in a revival of Tom Robertson's Society at the old Prince of Wales Theatre. The travel bug got the better of him, and he abandoned acting to travel with his wife Isabel to South America and the Falkland Islands, where he unsuccessfully tried his hand at sheep farming. The family returned to London a year later, and Terriss once again took up acting. His wanderlust again compelled him to take his young family on the road, and ventured to Kentucky, America, to breed horses. Failing again to find financial success, they made their way back to London in 1873. Over the next few years, he solidified his acting career, capitalising on his handsome presence and fine voice, becoming one of Britain's most popular actors. Because of his swashbuckling style, he became famous in hero parts and was known as Breezy Bill. In December 1885, 38-year-old William met 24-year-old Jessie Millward, with whom he starred as David Kingsley in the extraordinarily successful The Harbour Lights, which ran for 513 performances. The pair established themselves as romantic leads together, and it is generally acknowledged that they embarked on an affair. For the next 6 years, he worked closely with Millward and fellow actor Henry Irving at the Lyceum, where his most acclaimed roles included the title role in Henry VIII in 1892, and Henry II in Becket in 1893. In 1889 to 1890, and again in 1893 to 94, William, Henry and Jessie toured in the US. He was described by the New York Dramatic Mirror as one of the greatest and next to Henry Irving undoubtedly the most popular actor in England. By the 1890s, Terriss had become acquainted with Richard Prince, and William helped the struggling Richard to find work in various productions. Prince was born Richard Miller Archer near Dundee, Scotland, on the 11th of May 1858, one of 9 children. In about 1875, his parents went to London, where Prince joined them, and by 1887 he was appearing in small named roles in the London theatres, including the Adelphi. However, Prince had, over the years, increasingly abused alcohol and become mentally unstable, becoming known as Mad Archer. During the run of the Harbour Lights, in which Prince had a minor role, Terriss took offence at something that Prince had said about him, and had Prince dismissed. Terriss, however, sent small sums of money to Prince via the Actors' Benevolent Fund and continued to try to find him acting work. By 1897, Prince was destitute and unemployable. On the 13th of December, he was forcibly ejected from the foyer of the Vaudeville Theatre after trying to gain free admission with a pass from the Adelphi, to which he was no longer entitled. He and Terriss were seen to argue the next night in Terriss's dressing room in the Adelphi. Prince became increasingly convinced that Terriss was actively preventing him from getting acting work, and he developed a bitter attitude. On the 16th of December, 1897, Prince asked for money from the Actors' Benevolent Fund, but was told that his request could not be considered that day. On that same afternoon, Terriss was at his home in Princes Street, Hanover Square, with his friend Henry Graves. About 7 in the evening they went from there in a cab to the corner of Maiden Lane. There they got out and walked to the door of the Adelphi Theatre. According to Graves' testimony at Prince's trial, Terriss said, "Wait a minute, Harry, till I get my keys." He then took his keys from his pocket, stooped slightly to put the key in the door, and while he was doing that, somebody rushed from across the road and struck him 2 blows most rapidly on the back. At first, Graves thought they were given in good fellowship. Terriss turned round instantly, and the man then struck a 3rd blow into William's chest. Terriss said, "My God, I'm stabbed." Richard Prince then backed into the road, and Graves followed. There were cries of "Murder!" and "Police!" A constable arrived, and Graves reportedly said, "I charge this man with stabbing Mr. Terriss." Graves and the constable went with Prince to the police station. On the way to the station, Graves asked him, "What could have induced you to do such a cruel deed?" And he said, "Mr. Terriss would not allow me to have any employment, and I did it, in revenge," or perhaps he said, "by way of revenge." Terriss was carried into the stage door passage, where he was propped up on some pillows and had ice placed on his chest wound. Doctors from the nearby Charing Cross Hospital were called, who on arrival found him quickly dying. Terriss succumbed to his injuries shortly before 8 p.m. Frederick Lane, who understudied Terriss in the part of Captain Thorne in Secret Service, had a peculiar story to tell. He said, "I dreamt about this very thing last night, and when I came to the theatre this morning for the rehearsal, I told all the boys about it. I dreamt I saw Mr. Terriss lying on the landing, surrounded by a crowd, and he was raving. I seemed to see it all, and then it all faded away. It was a horrible dream. I could not tell what it meant. I tried to forget it during the day, but tonight again, when I came to the theatre, I was going down Bedford Street when something seemed to say, 'Do not go there.' I then went round to Maiden Lane, and there I saw this villain. I had heard him as being an old super, and knew he was asking for Mr. Terriss last night. His appearance struck me as peculiar. He wore a big cloak and a slouch hat. I, however, did not know him, and he said nothing to me. I walked on, and then a few minutes afterwards I heard a great noise and found that he had stabbed Mr. Terriss. I rushed back and saw Mr. Terriss taken indoors. If it had not been for the police, I believe the man would have been lynched." The murder became a sensation. Queen Victoria sent a letter of condolence to Isabel and Terriss' family after his death, and a wreath of orchids and lilies was also sent from the Prince of Wales. The letter from Queen Victoria read, "I send my condolences and deep sympathy to Mrs. William Terriss and her family in her bereavement. I deeply feel the loss which has robbed the English stage of one of its brightest ornaments." Prince appeared at the Old Bailey on the 13th of January, 1898. He initially pleaded guilty with provocation, but changed this on the advice of his counsel to not guilty. An insanity defence was argued, with doctors and even his mother giving evidence that he was of unsound mind. The jury pronounced Prince guilty, but, according to the medical evidence, not responsible for his actions. A verdict provided for under the Trial of Lunatics Act 1883, which would lead to indefinite detention. He was thus transferred from Holloway Prison to Broadmoor Criminal Lunatic Asylum, and became involved in entertainment for the inmates and conducted the prison orchestra until his death from natural causes in January 1937, aged 79. His relatively mild sentence was met with anger by the theatrical community, and Sir Henry Irving would later be quoted as saying, "Terriss was an actor, so his murderer will not be executed." Terriss was buried in Brompton Cemetery, London. There is a plaque on the wall by the stage door of the Adelphi Theatre recording his murder that reads, "William Terriss, 1847 to 1897, hero of the Adelphi melodramas, met his untimely end outside this theatre, 16 December 1897. A portrait of Terriss hangs in the stairwell of Denville Hall, the home for retired actors and actresses in Northwood, London. The home is run by the Actors' Charitable Trust, of which Henry Irving was the first president until his death in 1905. The spirit of William Terriss does not appear to be resting easy. Legend has it that his ghost haunts Covent Garden tube station and the Adelphi Theatre. One night, just after midnight, in November 1955, with the last passenger having left the platform, foreman collector Jack Hayden was performing his final checks before the station's closure, when he saw a tall, distinguished-looking man go towards the exit. Thinking they might have a lingering fare dodger on their hands, Hayden picked up the platform phone and instructed the booking clerk to catch that man coming up the emergency stairs. Bill wandered over to the top of the stairs and awaited the arrival of the man, who did not arrive. On November 24th, at 12:40 p.m, Jack Hayden was again on duty, sitting in the staff mess room, with the door open. He reportedly saw a tall man wearing a grey suit, funny old collar and white gloves looking at him from the anteroom. He asked, "Looking for the cloakroom, sir?" At which point the man disappeared. No one in the passage, not a sound of footsteps. At about midday on the 28th of November, Hayden was sitting in the staff mess room with station woman Rose Ring, when his tea break was interrupted by a loud scream. Moments later, station man Victor Locker came stumbling into the room in an extremely agitated state. "A man, he was standing there," he stammered to his colleagues. "It pressed down on my head. It vanished." Jack Hayden rang headquarters at Leicester Square, informing them, "We have a ghost here." Foreman Eric Davey, who also happened to be a spiritualist, embarked to Covent Garden Underground Station to try to solve the mystery. Davey held a séance in the anteroom, and a reluctant Victor Locker was persuaded to attend. Suddenly, Locker cried out, Mr. Davey, it's on you." Unperturbed, Davey ploughed on with the séance, claiming, "I got the name something and a murder nearby." Davey also jotted down a quick psychic sketch of the spirit. Pictures of William Terriss were sought out, and not only did they match Eric Davey's sketch, but when they were shown to Hayden and Locker, both declared, "That's him." Over the next 10 years, the ghost was reportedly seen more than a dozen times. Hayden said the apparition invariably appeared during November and December, and always looked exactly the same, and it usually appeared near a wall. He spoke to it several times, but it never answered. The last time he saw it, late one November night in 1964, he was walking down the infamous spiral stairway when he encountered the ghost walking up the same stairs. Following Jack Hayden's departure in 1965, the ghost of Covent Garden Underground Station appeared to have gone into hibernation. But then, in 1972, the apparition made several further appearances, being seen late at night on the 24th and 27th of March 1972 by the station foreman and one of the female staff when in the main staff mess room. Mr. Clifford, a porter, heard phantom footsteps in the room, and Edward Pratt, an engineer, had often felt the presence of an unseen person in the locality. That same year, a lift operator, having brought up the passengers from the last train, had locked up for the night when, turning round, he saw what he described as a tall geezer dressed in old-fashioned clothes, a waistcoat and tall hat, standing there. Thinking he had inadvertently locked a passenger in, the operator apologised, turned to get his keys to let the man out. On turning back, the man was no longer there. Puzzled by the passenger's disappearance, he descended into the station's depths, where he searched both platforms in case the man had gone down the stairs in the hope of catching a train, but he could find no sign of him. When he informed his colleagues about his experience, one of them showed him a photograph of William Terriss. It was the spitting image of the figure that the operator had encountered. Over at the Adelphi Theatre, William Terriss also appears on a semi-frequent basis. In 1928, actress June Tripp was appearing in Clowns in Clover at the Adelphi Theatre, and unbeknownst to her was given the dressing room in which William Terriss had died. One day, she was resting between performances on a sofa in the dressing room when it began to shake as though someone was kicking it from underneath. She looked beneath it, but found nothing, and resumed her repose. But no sooner had she lay back on the sofa than the shaking began again. A green light then appeared above the mirror, and she heard 2 loud taps, whereupon the green light vanished, and all became quiet. Her experience attracted the interest of renowned paranormal investigator Harry Price, the director of the National Laboratory of Psychical Research, and arrangements were made to hold a séance in June's dressing room in the hope of discovering the origins of the sofa shaking and mysterious raps. On the night of Wednesday, 14th of March, 1928, a number of cast members, including June, joined Harry Price in the haunted dressing room and, having formed a circle, they attempted to contact the spirit. Sadly, as the Daily News reported in the next day's edition, nothing happened. In 2012, actor Jason Manford was playing Italian barber Adolfo Pirelli in the musical Sweeney Todd. When he was off stage making a video call to his children to say goodnight, his daughter asked, "Daddy, who's that man behind you?" He assured her nobody was there, but the child insisted, "A man is right behind you." Manford thought nothing of it, assuming it was just his daughter's imagination. A few nights later, however, she said, "Daddy, he's back." Manford asked, "What does he look like?" To which his daughter described the man as tall with a moustache and dark hair, dressed as a soldier, and crying. Manford mentioned it to one of the theatre managers, who told him, "Oh yeah, that'd be William. Quite a famous ghost around these parts."